at the heart of your community. This is your station. This is Swindon 105.5. It's Swindon 105.5.
Swindon 105.5 has been producing 20 special heritage programmes looking at iconic buildings in and around the Swindon area, which have been funded by a grant from the Heritage Lottery Fund. I've been looking into the history of the chapel and cemetery at Radnor Street, which is situated between Old Town and Swindon's town centre. This video looks at how the documentary has been produced and includes an extract of the programme. At the 19th century, Swindon was expanding and needed a new cemetery. The first burials here at Radnor Street took place on the 6th of August 1881. Frederick Gore, a 54-year-old painter from New Swindon, and Albert Wentworth, who was aged just 1 month old from Gilbert's Hill, were the first to be laid to rest. The chapel was designed by William Reed and is situated in the centre of the cemetery. It's a Gothic-style building complete with gargoyles. This is a place where services were held before the burials and offered no creature comforts to the mourners. There was no heating or lighting in the building. Horse-drawn carriages enter via Radnor Street and draw up in front of the chapel, and then exit by the Dixon Street gate. Over the years, the cemetery has fallen into disrepair, but a group of keen local historians aim to return it back to its former glory. Mark Sutton is a member of the Swindon Heritage Group. Recently, together with another local historian, Francis Bevan, they organised a couple of walks through the cemetery, telling its history and the stories of some of those that are laid to rest there.
But it's such a peaceful place to be, like any cemetery is. It's not a depressing place. But when you look at it more in depth, if you're interested in history, especially local history, it is like an open book for you. But it's looking at people's lives. And a few years ago, when we looked around about doing the first one, how would we do it? We thought, well, just do it as the way we did it. And people did like it, they enjoyed it. And it's got more people looking into it, and of course relatives do like it as well. It's just really bringing people into the cemetery and telling them about the history of our town as well.
The cemetery closed in the 1970s, but if people have a family plot here, it's still possible to have a family member buried here. There's just no new graves here. But we often see flowers laid, so there are interments going on up here. It's got a bit of a reputation now as being neglected, but we're hoping all that will change, with next year's commemoration.
During the two World Wars, the United Kingdom became an island fortress used for training troops and launching land, sea and air operations. There are more than 170,000 Commonwealth war graves in the UK, many being those of servicemen and women killed on active service or who later succumbed to wounds. Swindon's Radnor Street Cemetery has been recognised as a Commonwealth war grave cemetery and contains 90 First World War burials and 14 from the Second World War.
The focal point really for the Commonwealth War Graves Commission is to put the Great Cross of Sacrifice here, and this designates Radnor Street Cemetery as a Commonwealth War Graves Cemetery, and this goes back to 1915. A small mobile Red Cross unit under the command of Fabian Ware, who was a major at the time, he, off his own back, was quite disheartened about the amount of soldiers being killed on the Western Front, and a lot of people then realised this war was going to drag on, and the amount of fatalities was going to grow. And they thought, we can't, after the war, and it finally ends, we can't have a mass of men killed, not commemorated. He thought about their families afterwards. He had a little foresight in him. So he started off his own back with his own volunteers, a graves registration unit, where they went around the battlefields after the battles had gone on. And they recorded where each man had fallen and tried to commemorate where they'd fallen, a crossing place, a marker where they were lost. And this finally was recognised by the government, and they called it the Imperial War Graves Commission in 1917.
It's nearly 100 years since the start of World War I. Even now, those who've served in the Great War are still being recognised by a Commonwealth War Grave headstone.
Richard Brown, Regional Supervisor, Commonwealth War Graves Commission, the West region of Britain. After the First World War, there was quite a bit of confusion about people's rights as per Commonwealth War Grave status. And there were many dead that slipped through the net, really. People that died subsequent to their wounds 2 or 3 years after the end of the war. They weren't considered perhaps by their family to be war dead, so they were buried in the normal manner. But if the family would have known the proper procedure, they would have had them then acknowledged as war dead and registered by the Ministry of Defence. Radnor Street is a well-maintained cemetery. There we have a nice example of how these burials are maintained in perpetuity.
Stones are the same now, there's Purbeck stones. As they're replacing headstones now, they're replacing it with an Italian marble. You have a look down the new ones down the next section, you see the Italian marble and how easy it is to read. But after a while, this wears away, it becomes very, very hard to read. The same happens when you go to the Western Front to photograph graves. You go all the way there, it's a bright day, and you try and take a photograph of your relative, and years to find, you can't read it. No. Especially with the sun against it, you cannot take a photograph of that. But what they've been doing on the Western Front, especially on the tours, you know, where everyone goes round, on the Poppy Trail they call them, they've been re-engraving every single headstone, all by hand, little machines. They sit there, re-engrave and then polish the headstone. That's what they do. But now any new headstone or replacement headstone, they're all done by this Italian marble. Yes.
The cemetery closed to new graves in the 1970s and the site has over 33,000 interments. Local historian Francis Bevan has a keen interest with the cemetery and wants to preserve it for future generations.
I've chosen this plot because this is the reason I've got involved with Radnor Street Cemetery, because there's so many memorials like this in such a sad state, and like we were just saying, isn't there some way that they can be repaired? I mean, this looks like it would be a pretty straightforward job, it just all needs putting back. There was a lot of vandalism up here at one point, but that seems to have tailed off a bit, and especially during the year when we were so successful up here and we were doing lots of walks, there was a sense of aliveness in the cemetery, if you can say that, you know. And I think it put people off who were coming up here just to cause problems. I mean, I don't know how this has ended up like this, whether somebody has actually pushed it over. I mean, there's also a problem with subsidence up here, you know, so it may have just got destabilised and just toppled over. It's difficult to know. But it does look as if it would be a relatively easy job, really. It looks just like a jigsaw puzzle, doesn't it? If you put that there and that there and that. But like Mark said, it's such heavy lifting. You'd need equipment.
We're sitting in the chapel, what used to be the old chapel. It's been disused for many years, but it's now being brought back to life by yourselves.
Yeah, again, the council are again behind us. I've looked at it, and they're going to do any structural work, particularly the roof. Overall, it's not bad condition. It really is good. We're going to open up the windows to let more light in, but protect that from the outside with perspex. But they said on the inside, I mean, I'm a decorator by trade, so I should be doing it. So I've got a friend as well, we're going to do it together. Really, we wanted to get the worst of it done for the remembrance service, but in the spring when we get the warmer weather and the lighter evenings, especially when we get the windows open, we want to get our hands into it, clean it out well, scrape the walls down and bring some colour into it, which I think, instead of doing it stark white all over, we were quite surprised when we took the first coat off, it's red on the bottom and blue on the top. So very dark colours, but it's very Victorian. They did like their colours like that. We're not going to go back to very dark colours, but just a warmer colour. and then we can invite community groups up if they want to use it as a community thing. Choirs as well. People have been saying about how in a choir in here for an event, and especially in the summer months, we can have people sat outside with a choir inside, and that would be such a nice thing. A Christmas event as well. We're going to tie a Christmas event up with our magazine. It comes out late November. So decorate the halls with a bit of sprigs of holly everywhere and all candlelight. So have candlelight, so it'll be dark days, just for a few hours, hot chocolate served, and a get together really. Just bringing people in.
You do have a passion for Radnor Street, don't you, Mark?
Yeah, definitely. It's not a place I want to end up. Well, I don't mind where I end up, it won't matter to me, but I just, because I'm a Swindonian, I was born here, this is our history of our town here. I really, really do like it. You know, I brought up in Rodbourne, but we moved up to Old Town when I was 10. And to go to school, go to town, I used to use Radnor Street as a shortcut, like everyone does. But I never, ever, not that time, I take much notice of it. I did notice war graves, and I've always had a passion for war graves. But when you look at, it's just everything, everyone's here from old Swindon. If anyone's got railway passions, it's here, the foreman in this place. But it's a pleasant place. I just feel at home here.
The cemetery is going to be one of the key areas of Swindon for the commemorations of the outbreak of World War I next year.
Yeah, it is. Because it's a Commonwealth War Graves cemetery, we've got this disused chapel, so we're going to put displays up in here, not only on the men commemorated in this cemetery, but on Swindon. We're going to have a roll of honour of Radnor Street in here, but we'll have displays on the wall explaining what happened on certain days of the war that Swindon men were involved in. Not always the casualties of that war, but men who came back as well and brought their stories back with them. We're going to concentrate on them as well. Invite everyone, really, just to come up, talk to us, and also bring people to bring the memories of their families up to us as well. So that's open. We're going to have that open quite a few times over those 4 years, really.
Sounds an amazing project you're doing, and as I think you said right at the start of our chat, it is going to bring new life back to the cemetery here.
Yeah, and because people see new life, it doesn't give an air of neglect. So hopefully people with a different attitude towards open places and parkland might think twice and move away from it and treat it with a bit more respect for what it deserves.
So the chapel, which was built over 120 years ago, will soon be given a new lease of life for the 21st century. And you can hear the full story of Radnor Street Chapel and Cemetery on Swindon 105.5.